Hey, welcome to Neversink Farm and another tool video. This one is, when do you get into a Paperpot transplanter as a farm? I did it very early on because labor was difficult to find and I just didn't have that many hours in a day. And then after I got it, I kind of worked out what I'd be using it for, but I didn't know beforehand. But, if you have a small garden, kind of like my family garden, it's just going to be too big. I mean, by the time you pull it 10 feet, you're going to be only planting half of the row and the rest you're going to have to hand plant anyway. So in that case, you may want to have a paper pot, but it may be with a zipper or something like that, because it works best at like 50 feet is kind of like the smallest bed. It works great at 50 feet. When you get down to 25 feet, it gets a little harder, especially like in a house. Once you have 50-foot beds and you're growing the crops that this does well, like onions, anything that's densely planted like spinach or cilantro or dill. It works with Hackerai turnips early. I've seen people use it with arugula early in the season. Lettuce heads, especially like Salanova, if you're doing lettuce mix, all of those things, if you're doing them at a scale of like 50 to 100 foot a week, it's a perfect time because it's going to reduce planting time by an incredible factor. But there is a consideration, and that's it's not going to work in a bed full of junk, right? There's a plow underneath it, which is going to be digging a trench about 1.5 to 2 inches wide. So if you couldn't do that anyway in your garden because it's too full of rocks or other junk, the transplanter is not going to be able to do it because you're just pulling it along and it's just going to, dig down and create a trench. And it's going to push stuff out of the way, but if it hits a rock, it's over. And I have a very rocky farm, so I've been removing rocks slowly. So even when I first started using the transplanter, I could hit a rock every 10 feet. And I would plant slowly, pull the rock out because I wanted to get rid of the rocks. Now I can plant all over the farm and I'll never hit a rock. If you don't want to remove your rocks or it's just too rocky, then it's just not going to work. And in terms of the type of soil you have, as long as you've been adding compost, organic matter to your soil, and it's a healthy soil, then it's going to work like a charm. If it's incredibly hard soil, it's a bit harder to pull through the soil, it's still going to, pull itself down into the soil just because of the blade itself. But it does get harder and harder to put through the soil and also to take big chunks and try to plant. But then you're probably already having problems planting, I would imagine, if that's the case. So having decent beds, they don't have to be perfect. It's not like a 4-row cedar or something where you need perfect beds. But it has to be reasonably good to be able to create the channel. So the scale for me is, as I said, it's about, if you're planting 50-foot beds of plants that this works well with on a weekly basis, then it's already time to transition to something like this, to a Paperpot transplanter. You're going to discover more things that it works with, like we do. Here's a zinnias. Works great with zinnias. Works great with sunflowers. You can even plant garlic with it. I mean, there's just so many more things. And now they just developed long chain pots at 12 inches for broccoli. So you do 2 rows of broccoli on a bed, which is actually a good distance because you want smaller broccoli heads for market. Yeah, it's just a lifesaver on the farm. So, well, watch my take on scale. Let me know what you think. You can write some comments below and I'll try to answer any of them or maybe something I haven't thought of. All right, so till next time.